Hello friends, I'm Kayla. 1 year ago, I made a video where I read the first chapter of all 100 books on my TBR shelf, and I assigned them a number from 1 to 10 as far as how intrigued I was after that first chapter. At this point, I've read about 40 of the books on my shelves. It may not look like that many have left because I also have added more books to the shelf. I've been doing a little video series with my channel members where I also read the first chapter of things, reset my bookshelves every once in a while. I'm going to be doing another one coming up this week. But today in this video, I'm going to be reading 4 more, and it's actually the final 4 that I gave a 10 out of 10. Some of these were in the original video and some of them were in the soon after follow-up. So We Sold Our Souls by Grady Hendrix, which is one of his last books that I have to read. It's horror. I have a thriller called Are You Sleeping by Kathleen Barber. That is one of the only thrillers that I gave this high of a rating. We have another horror, fantasy, surrealism kind of book, Mirrorland by Carol Johnstone. And then finally we have a science fiction adjacent speculative book, The Measure by Nikki Erlich. I'm actually going to try to read all of these in the next, or finish all of them in the next 72 hours because I have started one of them already. And at the end, I'm going to do a little assessment because the idea of ranking or rating all of these first chapters is once I've read the book, does the first chapter indicate how the overall book is going to go? So I'll give you a chart at the end that calculates how accurate that rating is for the overall rating at the end. We're following a character who used to be in a rock band. Her life is in shambles. She's working at the front desk of a hotel. She's dealing with terrible people. She's wondering what has happened to her life. So in those 19 pages, we've reflected on that, and the synopsis promises what's to come is a violent act that shows her that maybe her soul has been sold and now she's gonna go on a mission of revenge. And I love the writing of this. Kicking things off with We Sold Our Souls, I picked up the audiobook. I've been listening to it over the last couple days. It started out very action-packed and then slowed down a little bit, and now it's like intense action again. We have gotten a lot of intense, violent, gory horror scenes. Of all the Grady Hendrix that I've read, it's reminding me the most of the Final Girl support group. I'm liking it more than that one, but I would say I think I gave that one a 3. And if you loved that one, this should be the other one that you pick up. Much like that one, it has a little bit to do with fame, but that's not necessarily the active storyline. That's something in the past. And you're following this woman driving around being in danger. There was an action, violent death at the very beginning, and now Chris is going to all of her former bandmates trying to figure out what's going on. Various bandmates believe that someone is following them, that they are in danger, that bad things are going to happen to them. One of their bandmates is like the most famous person in the world, incredibly successful, and they didn't end up on the same trajectory because he signed a record deal that they didn't. And now they believe that he sold their souls for this record deal. So she's just kind of running around evading somebody who might be after her. And it's fun because there's a mixed media element with articles, radio broadcasts. There's a lot of music infused into this. She believes that an album of theirs, that her life is like following the album. So each song is representing a certain aspect of her life or the violence she's about to encounter. And then what I really like about this is the inclusion of real life musicians and bands. It's not this entirely fictional universe. It's referencing celebrities and musicians that we already know and acting as though this band Dirt Work was just a part of all of it in real life. At this point, it doesn't feel like a 5-star, but I'll update you at the end with my final rating. Once again, a win from Grady Hendrix. This wouldn't have been a 5-star prediction because I don't think I've ever given him 5 stars. I always give him a 4 or a 3, mostly 4s though. But the first chapter was obviously so intriguing, but it ended up being the prediction that I would have made beforehand rather than after reading the first chapter. Not too far off. I really like his horror. Grady Hendrix leans towards dude horror. It feels like it's gonna be dude horror. Even though he almost exclusively writes women as his main characters, it could so easily fall into dude horror where the author pretends that they're gonna explore complex issues and emotions, relationships, but then they get distracted by their own interest in car crashes and evil monsters, and they forget to go a little bit deeper. He never really drops the ball in that way. It is intense, it's action-packed, it's heavy metal music, there's performances, there's lots of action, there's graphic scenes, but he doesn't forget the underlying themes that he wants to explore, like finding your place and feeling that sense of belonging and feeling like you have potentially wasted your life purpose or the grief that comes along with so many of these experiences. And then he also gives us commentary on like women being taken advantage of in many different scenarios. And then within this one specifically, how it feels to be pressured to be a certain type of performer, make a certain type of music. It was a little bit Schrader's Chord, a little bit Jennifer's Body, a little bit Detroit Rock City. I had a good time with it. If you like rock and roll, pick it up. We ended up with a 10 out of 10. So what happens in this is every single person one day, the same day, wakes up to a little box on their doorstep with a piece of string in it. And they realize that this piece of string represents how long their life is. But in that first chapter, we just got introduced to one character named Nina, and her waking up and finding the box. Well, first she wakes up and looks at social media and everyone's like, what is this box? What does this mean? How did we all get it? Like, is it aliens? Is it the government? Like, what is it? And at the end of her chapter, she talks about how Mara, I think Mara's her roommate or her girlfriend, or her sister, and she's like, Mara doesn't know yet. And so in the next chapter, we're gonna follow Ben, and then eventually I see that Mara gets a chapter, and I think we're just following those people. Oh no, just kidding. There's also Hank and maybe some others. It's reminding me of The One by John Mars, where it's science fiction, thrillery, and we're gonna get all these different POVs and how everybody reacts differently to receiving this box. And it's like, do you want to know how long your life is gonna be? What are you gonna do with that information? Where do these boxes come from? There's already so many questions, and all I read was 7 pages, so yeah, this one was a win. I hate the cover though. I'm just about to do some live reading sprints. I'm all ready to go to hang out with the besties, and they're gonna get my live kind of thoughts on the measure. I'm a third of the way in at this point, and I really like it. One of my favorite tropes or themes or whatever you want to call it is when you're following many people having the same experience and how they deal with it differently. Obviously that's keeping it really fast paced as well, because each chapter is a different perspective. Somebody who woke up and found the box and decided not to look at it. Somebody who saw their box on the doorstep and opened it right away and saw that theirs was short. Somebody who looked and theirs was long, but their partner's is short. And it's like impacting everybody's relationship differently and your just perspective on reality. And it's like this constant question of, did this happen because their string is short, or is their string short because this thing happened? And obviously it's causing so much panic. If you opened your box and saw you had a super short string, you might immediately go to the hospital and be like, well, I'm about to die, like somebody help me. But is that death inevitable? And if you go to the hospital and they don't give you the proper care because they don't take you seriously, because it's just like a fucking string and like nobody really knows what it means yet, is your string short now because your hospital care was poor? And obviously this impacts the entire world. Everybody got a string. Everybody's lives has now been changed, and so the government and healthcare, like everything has to run differently, because they can't just do tests on every single person that shows up because they think their life's about to end but they have no actual symptoms. There are obvious implications that this book is delving into, but also it's talking about privacy. It's talking about our constant need to share everything online, and how it's become so normalized to be in everybody's business, and how you feel, or people in here feel, entitled to information. And now it's not just information about your life, it's like literally your life, how long your life is going to be. People feel like they should know that about everybody. It's so interesting, and because the concept is interesting, I don't feel like I need to be connected to the characters. And I remember feeling the same way when I was reading The One by John Mars, which is like the easiest comparison I can make to this, jumping around to so many different perspectives and them like being connected to one single person and knowing that that is like their soulmate. And I couldn't tell you at this point, years later, who was even featured in The One, who the couples were. I don't know the characters that well, but it's the idea that's carrying it. I totally forgot to check back in with you last night. My apologies. I made it to like 2/3 of the way in, and I take back what I was saying about the characters not being important. You are supposed to connect with the characters, at least I am, and I'm appreciating that, and I'm enjoying everything. I just think that this is a satisfying kind of book. Every single thing that you might consider when people are getting their strings, like if it happened in real life, all of those things are being brought up. Things like, how might this affect the political climate? And in here, the people who are running for president, there's like a lot of politics in here. That is only one of the perspectives, but it is taking a bulk of the focus, is like would you vote for somebody if you knew that they weren't going to last their entire term as president? And then things like exploitation, the military is being brought into it, and the concept of who should we choose to send to war, people who have short strings or who have long strings, who we know are going to live a long time, or the ones who are just going to like leave us very quickly. It's covered betrayal, the idea of somebody looking at your string without consent. The concept of trading strings with somebody is something that has come to mind for me. Like, how could you get further in life or improve your social standing or be treated differently if you have a different length string, and what's stopping people from just trading them or stealing somebody's? And then there's something I wasn't even thinking about, which is like using the strings to get preferential treatment as far as things like applying for adoption, and how people could be discriminated against if they have a short string. Like, why would they be selected to have a child? There are so many interesting concepts and technology and the ways that the world currently works, and how those things like get leaned into when there's this new like shocking development. I'm liking a lot about it. It is going into more sentimental territory than fun, wacky territory. So it's more about grappling with the end of life, things similar to like the conversations in the Midnight Library, rather than a bunch of wacky reveals like in The One. I'm gonna wrap it up in the next, I think, hour though, and I'll give you my final rating. I finished it and I'm gonna give it a 4. I understand the people who had like a really emotional reaction to this. It just wasn't me. I think I could have used some different perspectives, people, like just a few more. I don't know if I wanted them instead of certain perspectives or in addition to, but just other types of lives and other things to explore and careers, because I wasn't the most interested in the things that we were talking about. But this book accomplished all of its goals. I think the intent was very clear. It ended right when it wanted to end, right when you figured it would end, right when everybody decides everything, and it all just comes to a nice conclusion. I definitely wanted it to be a little more like, oh my God, like a couple shocking things. Maybe something weird happens, maybe a big reveal. I don't know if that would be in line with what the book turned out to be, obviously, which is why it didn't do those things and it just stayed pretty like tender. But I definitely would not hesitate to recommend this to anybody who likes these types of stories that make you grapple with your existence and have a kind of existential crisis about your life. So I'm gonna move right into the next book. This one caught me the most off guard because I've had it for a while. I thought maybe I would move it out of here, but it has this podcast element. The first chapter was 28 pages and we're getting an idea of this murder that happened. The man responsible for the murder is in jail, and now we're reading from the perspective of Josie, who it's her dad who died, and she's the reason this man is in jail, and everyone's questioning, did he actually do it? So we're following her now as an adult. She has this twin sister, Lainey, who she doesn't talk to. I don't know, there was just something about it that made me give it a 10. I really want to pick this back up. And I think it's become a movie even. So that'd be fun to watch. Pleasant surprise, ending the whole thing with a 10. Now, obviously, I read and loved that first chapter, right? You just saw it. I just had to go back and watch it because I read the first chapter of this and I was like, I've never read that before. So I had to go back and watch the video and see what I said about it, because I couldn't have told you I'd ever read that. And in this moment, I would not give it a 10. I'm surprised what I rated this. And now I'm concerned. Was it maybe because I was reading so many thrillers back to back the first chapter that this one just worked more than the other, so I kind of inflated the rating? First of all, I don't really like true crime. I don't read true crime, and even like true crime within fiction, I'm not always interested in. Sometimes it works for me. Because I love mixed media and I love podcasts in books, that just naturally leads me into the types of stories where there are podcasts about. The most often podcast you're gonna find is one about a crime, because it's a mystery book and there's someone investigating something, right? So it's fun reading the podcast transcript, but I'm like, it's not something I'm super interested in, following somebody who's like investigating this murder and is convinced that the person didn't do it, who's in prison. And then during the interview, they mentioned that the woman whose husband is the one who died, who like maybe was having an affair with the guy who killed her husband, and that was his whole motive, she joined a cult. And I'm like, is that gonna be a part of the book? I don't like reading about cults. I checked out the audiobook because I thought, a podcast, how fun would that be to listen to? Hate the audiobook. Oh my God. Can't stand the narration style of it, and it doesn't sound like a podcast anyway, so whatever. But I'm feeling unmotivated for sure to get into this now. Anyway, I'll let you know how it's going. This book is very readable, but it's also not like super good. It's not one of the most interesting thrillers I've ever picked up. I don't think this is going to be above like it's not gonna be above a 4, but it's definitely captured my attention. Like the way that it's written, the way it's introduced characters, all of the dynamics. I want to finish it, but I have to go to sleep. No, I don't have my glasses on. I'm so sorry. It is midnight. I have betrayed my own eyeballs, and I'm like 60 pages from the end. I just can't do it. I'm so tired. But I want to know how this ends. I feel like there's going to be a reveal, and based on the characters and how unreliable everybody is, I definitely have my predictions. But I also don't see it being the kind of book that I'm going to be mad at how it ends, because I'm not the most invested. Every time I finish a chapter, I'm like, oh my God, I have to read the next one. So we have this woman, and she had a twin sister, and one of them is responsible for this man going to prison. And the podcast host is very committed to finding out the truth. Not so much she automatically believes that the guy didn't do it, but there wasn't that much evidence, and she wants to make sure like the right thing happened. And I think that it's doing a good job of covering kind of both sides of the true crime situation, where people are really invested in something that has nothing to do with them, but because they want to make sure somebody hasn't been accused of the wrong thing, they feel like they are, you know, standing up for something that not a lot of people really care about, and how the justice system fails people. And then on the other side of things, it's like opening up this investigation, not physically, but like emotionally and personally for all of these individuals, is causing trauma and re-traumatizing all of the people who actually were involved in this horrific event. What? The new Fortnite came out today, and my family's having a lot of emotions about it. So obviously there are positives and negatives to the situation, and we're following Josie and Lainey current day, as well as like revisiting the past and what happened that night that their dad died. And current day, they're finding out all of this information and all of like other relationships that were happening, and just like neighborhood drama. And then actively, these sisters like don't get along, and they're very different and self-destructive. There's a lot going on with their dynamic, and they definitely don't trust each other, and even what they each believe happened back in the day. So I'm more invested, I think, in their current day situation, because, you know, they're adults and there are relationships and so many things. And now there's an extra mystery, because it does say in the synopsis that their mother dies in the current day timeline. I'm so tired. And it's supposedly a suicide, but is it really? We will find out. I will find out tomorrow. I woke up bright and early to finish this one, and I have to say I was really hoping for / expecting a more, I don't know, explosive ending, like bigger reveals, twists, something that had a real impact. It just got wrapped up really quickly. It was one of those situations where someone held information and they just didn't reveal it until it was convenient. It was definitely engaging, but I would call it forgettable. I definitely get the feeling that in a couple days I will not remember anything about this book, any of these characters. I think it has to then land at a 3, because like it was fine. I don't think there was anything really wrong with it. It definitely brought up interesting conversations and had lots of dialogue that I think people will appreciate. I don't know. A lot of you warned me about this one when I gave it a 10 out of 10, and I guess you were right. So lastly, we're moving on to another book about twins. We got a 10 out of 10 with Mirrorland. I wasn't expecting it. I'm very excited. I think it's just because the first line of it was, I wasn't there when my sister died. And the last line, after just 2 pages, was, I wasn't anywhere when my sister died. because she isn't dead. And that sounds like nothing, but if you read those 4 pages, and learned about like her twin sister, and it just added a lot of intrigue about like why she died and where she was and how did they get separated. And then for her to say her sister's not dead, it's like, what are you talking about? She was just sitting at this restaurant or this bar and watching the news coverage of her sister's disappearance. So her sister is missing, but she's not actually dead. And what is Mirrorland? I don't know anything, but I love that first chapter. I have, I think, 3 hours until we leave for the evening to go to a friend's house and to go out for dinner and stuff. So I probably won't finish it today. I guess it depends if we come home or we stay over. I don't really know how the evening's gonna pan out. But this is the last chance of this video to get a book that matches the first chapter rating. My last chance to get a 5-star for this video. I haven't had a 5-star yet this month. I think my current percentage is 10% of my reads have been 5 stars, which, I mean, like, it's obviously better than not getting any, but I really need to bump it up. Maybe this will be the one. I can't really remember much about it. So let me check in with you at like the 100-page mark. Deal? Quick update so I don't forget. I am 7 chapters in, about 70 pages, I think it was, and the story has not captivated me yet, but it's very atmospheric. It's like island, ocean vibes. There's the sister who is missing, and similar to the last book, there's a lot of tension between them. There's obviously secrets from their past. I recently read The Insatiable Volt Sisters by Rachel Eve Moulton that is also this similar vibe. There's just a lot of description. It's a lot of our main character considering who her sister is, where her sister is, and not a lot of movement, but she is getting some clues, she thinks, from her sister as like a kind of treasure hunt to find her, because these are the kinds of games that she would play, she thinks. So I'm intrigued, but I didn't get much read because it wasn't like the most fascinating thing ever. I know I've said something of this nature before, but I am officially committing to it that if Stephen King has blurbed something, I'm not gonna love it. I don't understand his taste. Like, I like his books, but the things that he likes, I don't know. This is definitely gonna be like a 3 by the end, and I can pick out a bajillion books that are gothic, about sisters, that are about like the water, that all feel the same. And the atmosphere of it all is not enough for me. I think I can like gothic books, but there has to be some type of other world quality, and I thought this would have it, but I just don't think the people calling this surrealism and then it leans towards fantasy, I just like don't agree, because this is a psychological suspense. It's not really, well, yeah, it's mystery. It's maybe a little bit thriller. It just feels like a suspense book, and that is how it pitched itself. I guess this and this other book from this author look like they're going to be horror, surrealism, speculative in nature, but that's not actually how they describe themselves, so that was my mistake. But people do talk about this like other world quality, and yes, there is this imaginary world that the twins like invent in their minds and kind of live in, but that's not the story. Like, the story is her trying to figure out what happened to her sister and thinking she's getting messages from her sister and dealing with her sister's husband, and kind of everybody is a suspect and they're just waiting to figure out what happened. And it has that trope that I don't really love, where people have memories, but they're only able to access them at the exact like perfect moment when they absolutely need to. I think her strengths are definitely building the atmosphere, building the vibe. I love like seaside books, and I love hearing about the ocean waves and the sounds and just the like fog rolling in, but she's not really excelling at plot, in my opinion. I do have 40 pages to go, and I think this is one of those books that people have said goes off the rails, has like a twist ending or something like that, so I'm looking forward to that happening. Well, you know what? It did have some twists at the end, a couple reveals that I didn't see coming. I didn't like either of them, but that's probably just because I didn't feel completely invested in the story from the beginning. So I always say what I'm looking for in a thriller is to be entertained and surprised. I was one of the two, and that's why I feel like a 3 is perfect. I really wish I had found a 5-star in this. I feel like there's definitely an audience that I could recommend this to. If you loved these, I liked these, and you could possibly love this. But at the end of this journey, I have read 42 books off of my TBR shelf, and this is the rating that I originally gave their first chapter. Obviously, most of the ones that I've completed at this point are the ones that I gave 10 or 9 out of 10. Obviously, like, I'm just the most motivated to read them. And I was spot on with my rating of 10 of them. These aren't technically like predictions, but the first chapter got a 10. You translate that to a 5, and 10 of the ones that I gave that rating to the first chapter, I also gave a 5-star to the final book. There was also a good amount of ones that I gave 9 stars to the first chapter and were indeed 4.5-star reads. So these are the ones that I was perfectly accurate about. And then if you add in all the books that I was close with, it is the majority of those 42 that I was within like 1 star of my prediction. Some in a good way, like Kaikei, the first chapter was an 8, which translates to a 4, and I gave it a 5. So the book was better than the first chapter. And then Such a Fun Age and Wrong Place, Wrong Time, I gave a 4.5 to the first chapter, and those ones were a 4, so they were pretty close. Family Game and Kill Creek were 2.5s for their first chapter, and I gave them a 3-star by the end. And then these are the 14 that I was wrong about. There was quite a bit of horror that I thought could be 5 stars based on their first chapter that I gave 5 stars, but ended up being a 3 or even a 2. And on the flip side, like I Who've Never Known Men, Skyward, and 100 Years of Solitude, I rated lowly for their first chapter, but they ended up being 4 and 5-star reads. So no, at the end of the day, the first chapter does not indicate with absolute certainty what the final rating of the book is going to be. But it does reflect that more often than not. 1/3 of the books I was inaccurate about. The first chapter did not indicate what the final rating of the book was going to be, a third. But then 2/3 was close or spot on. So I do think that I can continue to judge a book by its first chapter. And I'm going to stick to my rule that I can't put anything on my TBR shelf because I allot each shelf to a different thing. These are ones under an 8 out of 10, and these ones are the ones that got an 8, 9, or 10. I will continue to not put them here and organize them until I've read that first chapter. So I have space for 35 new things. So members, in a couple days, I will see you with an updated version of my TBR shelf. And for everybody else, I will have a spring TBR coming up soon, and you can see where everything sits. Thank you so much for watching. Let me know if any of these books were your favorites, or if there's anything that you see on this top shelf that you think I absolutely need to get to soon because I rated it highly and I should probably prioritize it. Okay, bye.